This is KLEAN Radio.
Welcome, everybody out there listening to KLEAN Radio. Happy St. Patty's Day to all. My co-hostess with the mostesses is Erica Abfab Spiegelman tonight.
Yes, hi, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
And
it was a marathon today. The LA marathoners came through my neighborhood. It was very exciting.
I don't think, it's sort of funny. It's
a little bit of health and a little bit
that's
of...
That's exactly right.
Yeah, nice balance.
And, if you're out there right now and it's St. Patty's Day, maybe you're on the third day of the bender, maybe you're just starting... It
started Friday.
Your first day of the bender started, give us a call.
Yeah.
And,
process the feelings around, maybe the pressure that when there's a holiday like this, it seems to be, everybody is supposed to engage in it, and you kind of feel bad if you don't go out, or, if there's any outside pressure you feel and where it's coming from, it's nice to process that with us and ask us any kind of questions.
Yeah, and please don't drink and drive.
Absolutely not.
If you're going to drink and drive.
There's a lot of checkpoints out there, too.
Yeah, call us first.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll try to figure out a way to get you a cab.
Or some kind of alternative.
Well, you're going to go get them.
Or I'll go get them.
I designated you tonight the St. Patrick's Day.
I'll be the little leprechaun. I'll be saving people, and yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and we have an amazing show actually for everybody out there tonight. For me, St. Patrick's Day wasn't a festive holiday. It was sort of, I just drank a lot, and it was like every other day.
Yeah, but then you actually probably felt, you felt like you were justified in your drinking because everyone else was. It was normalized for you. I was talking about that. In the big cities, there's parades all weekend long, and it's kind of, people tend to attuned to their environment. So if everyone else is drinking and everyone else is carrying on, then they feel like they could be engaged in the same kind of behavior. And, that's not necessarily the case because some of us can't carry on that way, I'm
actually interested. Is it St. Patrick's Day all across the world, or is it just... I know that sounds like a dumb question.
No. It's a great question because my friend who lives in Rome, she just sent me a picture of her in Rome celebrating. She's in green and she has her Clover shirt on. And it's worldwide.
And actually, I'm actually very curious about that. Our co-host with the most, Andrew, is live in England right now. Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
Hey, how's it going?
How is St. Patrick? Is there a St. Patrick's Day right now in England?
Well, being that it's Irish.
It's an Irish holiday.
Yeah.
Stone's throw from Ireland. Most people here are dressed in green. And actually, it was dangerous to go out. In London and Chinatown, they were having riots. So.
Can you do me a favor, Andrew?
Can we take a picture?
Yeah, can you please wear green and take a picture? And
it's now 1 a.m., so I've avoided it all, thank God.
Andrew, it's so good to hear from you. We're so excited you called in.
Yeah, things are going great over here in the UK. We're making incredible headway. I've been learning so much from... I was at the House of Lords the other day. And
wow.
A.K.A. Judah's house.
Yeah. And I had a wonderful speech that I gave at the Scottish Recovery Festival.
Oh, my gosh.
On a panel with a bunch of members of the British Empire, as they're called, MBEs, and a couple lords.
That's exciting.
Had, Lord Victor, who was there.
And not Lord Judah.
The Prime Minister gave a video conference little speech. So we've had incredible movement over here, and I hope that I'm being able to give and teach as much about recovery and especially abstinence to people here in the UK as they're able to teach me about their different views about harm reduction and the maintenance of alcohol and drug problems here in the UK.
Which actually, Andrew, which actually is like, because we have an amazing show tonight. We have in the studio with us, we have Dr. Dina, who is also known as the pot doctor, I guess, and the basis of the show Weeds.
But not a real doctor.
But not a real doctor.
Yeah.
And we decided for the show we're calling me Major Judah.
Major.
No,
you're Corporal
What do you mean
Judah.
not a real doctor? Is he? You mean not a medical doctor?
She's not a medical doctor.
Well, why don't you tell her for yourself, Dr. Dina? Welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Thank you so much.
We're so happy to have you.
That doesn't make someone not a real doctor.
I did not go to medical school, so I'm not a real doctor. It is simply a nickname.
It was a nickname, actually,
nickname.
Andrew, given to her by Snoop Dogg.
Snoop Dogg is now giving out doctorates. That's
yes,
great.
you know.
How do I get one of those? What do you have to do? Like,
we'll introduce you to
40-foot
Snoop.
bong to get that? Is that like?
But let's welcome Dr. Dina to
Probably could have gotten that in college. I don't think I could have gotten that now. But, anyway.
But let's welcome Dr. Dina to KLEAN Radio. Thank you so much for coming in. You are the basis of the TV show Weeds.
Yes, I am.
And it's one of those subjects. I mean, this is it's a touchy subject. It's a touchy subject. You are one of the biggest pro advocates for marijuana use, for legalization of marijuana. You're actually the forefront of it.
You know, I'm really pro medical marijuana.
Okay.
Legalization, I don't think that we're ready for it yet.
Yeah.
But I don't think that people should be in jail for weed. Really, what it comes down to me, it's the same as being in jail for having a bottle of whiskey. So I don't feel that that's the appropriate way. I think that if we were to legalize it and we were able to tax it, we'd be able to build rehab centers for people that have issues with marijuana, and then we'd be able to help you, because I don't necessarily want to just throw out another substance in the world for people to just take advantage of. But when you look at Holland and people have access to it, their drug use is actually way lower than ours out here.
Right.
That's true and not true. I mean, in Holland, actually, marijuana is, contrary to popular belief, illegal. It's tolerated in tea rooms and in cafes, but it's not legal. And most of the drug laws in the U.S. are actually fairly tolerant in that under an ounce, it's a misdemeanor for personal possession unless it's divided up in what looks like a distribution package, and then you can be charged with distribution. But you know, we've made a lot of progress in America in terms of the legalization of marijuana. But from a federal government standpoint, and the ability of the federal government to actually impose themselves back onto the states and interfere with the states' rights, we still have the DEA coming in and saying that all marijuana is illegal. So distribution is really the big issue at this point, not actual consumption.
You are 100% right. It's
Please
the end
don't tell
user.
him that. He's
no,
got.
I'm going to give him this one. I'm going to give him this one,
right.
only this one. But what's interesting is, you know, the end user is not the one that the DEA is going after. It's the dispensaries. It's the people that are, you know, that are distributing the marijuana, and they're not necessarily criminals. They're doing something. You know, you had to have seen a doctor first
and to get the prescription.
It's not even a prescription. It's only a letter of recommendation. It can't be a prescription because it's not federally illegal. I mean, federally legal. It's still a Schedule I drug, and therefore they're saying that there's no medicinal value to it.
By the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. Please give us a call at 888-375-3613. That's 888-375-3613. We have an amazing show tonight. We have Dr. Dina, medical marijuana expert and consultant. Also, we have in the studio with us tonight Joe Parrott, who's the intake director at KLEAN. Welcome back to KLEAN Radio, Joe.
Thank
you. And on the phone in England, London, England, that is, we have Andrew Spanswick, and my co-host in the studio is Erica Fab Spiegelman.
Yes, we got a good group tonight.
So I would love for anybody out there listening, you might have an opinion on this. You know, this is one of those subjects that's, you know, going to be debated for a long time, and I think that's what the point of the show sometimes is, debating subjects that aren't always comfortable talking about.
I think everybody has an opinion on this. So this is what is so exciting about tonight, is because, you know, it's not wrong or right or good or bad. It's just about having your voice heard and how it affects you, and you know, we have a wonderful. And
it's St. Patrick's Day. It's green, right?
Yes.
That's the main point. I think it really doesn't make a difference whether the real debate is whether government should control individual thought and action.
Right.
And I think that's what we're seeing here, is where the argument of legalization versus addiction versus, you know, problems with the substance really should come down to the individual level, in my opinion, versus the government just trying to dictate personal behavior.
And it's more than just the government. You have special interest groups like private prisons who are making billions of dollars a year, putting people who are really not criminals in jail, but they're creating criminals.
Mandatory sentencing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Joe,
starting back with Rockefeller laws, which were just atrocious.
Joe, you do intake at KLEAN, and how many people, you know, we were talking outside about marijuana addiction, marijuana usage. How many is marijuana an addiction? Are people addicted to marijuana?
Yes, it is, and we do get people in that are addicted to marijuana, and especially we get a lot of young people, and it really affects their lives in a negative way. We get a lot of young kids that, their lives really aren't going anywhere because they've been spending their teen years pretty much doing nothing, and then they finish school, and now it's time to get out into the world, and they don't have any motivation.
Well, it's a psychological addiction, and we were talking about that earlier, Dr. Dina and I. It's a lot of people, they smoke it, and they smoke it to a point where it becomes intertwined with how they conduct their day-to-day life, their emotions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I actually like, Dr. Dina, that you're not just somebody out there saying, hey, everybody, get a marijuana.
Absolutely
right.
not.
You've actually
Absolutely
done the research on both ends. And you're actually talking about something really interesting. And Andrew, I want to get your opinion on this after she talks about this. Was you were talking about in Germany, there
was a study that was done in Germany on people with paranoid schizophrenia, and 50 people they gave anti-schizophrenia drugs, and 50 people they gave straight CBD, which is a compound that's found in the marijuana leaves that does not get you high. And at the end of the 6-week trial, they said that the 50 people that took the actual prescription drugs were suffering from severe movement disorders and major problems. But the people who took CBD were perfect. I mean, they really did not have a side effect, and they were not showing symptoms of schizophrenia.
Andrew?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that's not the central component of marijuana, which is THC. So I'm all for creating derivative drugs from the cannabis plant. And I think that that's what's great about science, is that we can actually take something that might be beneficial from nature and create alkaloids that are beneficial, but isolate them. The idea that we can expand that to just marijuana in general when THC is the most active ingredient is sort of ludicrous. Also, I think that there is no cure for schizophrenia. We know that. The other point that I'd like to make really quickly, just on your statement about marijuana, is that while it's psychologically addicting as the sort of central reference, the reality is that marijuana and THC can cause secondary effects, such as paranoia, especially, as well as induced schizophrenia by lowering the threshold. And those secondary illnesses are not included in the classification of the harmful effects of marijuana off front. So people say it's psychologically addicting, implying that there's no physiological effect of the drug, and yet it can induce schizophrenia or lower the threshold and certainly cause paranoia. We see many, many clients with extreme paranoia. And even, Snoop Dogg and other major rappers, Tupac talked about his heavy smoking of marijuana and that it led to a state of paranoia.
Well, I think that's really important what you're saying, Andrew, is that what you're talking about is illegal purchasing marijuana on the street. And yes, those are all side effects that can happen. However, when you're purchasing something from a medical marijuana dispensary, they have it taken to a lab, and those labs test it. And if you know exactly what you need, for example, if I have back pain, I don't want to feel high. I don't want a high THC. I want a very low THC with a high CBD, and I'll feel normal. And we can get that now. But before, it was you go to a drug dealer, you get whatever he gives you, and he might have some pills, and he might have cocaine, and he might have heroin, and now I'm exposed to all these different drugs that I might not have ever looked for, but now I found it.
So you're saying it's more contained?
It's absolutely more contained, and not only does it take people away from finding and access to other drugs, which I think are really dangerous.
It's cutting down on crime.
But it's cutting down on crime. And I think that, most people, and I spend a lot of time in these medical marijuana dispensaries. There's always going to be that 10% of people who are addicts, who have fooled a doctor, who they want the most, give me the strongest what you have, give me the strongest. That's always the people in the dispensaries, they know that. They know, here we go.
Right.
Because that's not what we're here for.
So you're also for the training at the dispensaries.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I think that's I really do actually think that's a great thing, because there needs to be oversight.
There's responsibility in that.
We don't want people walking around the street so high that they can't function.
What you're talking about is the development of regulation,
right.
and I'm all for that.
Yeah.
The part of the problem is that it's still the Wild West out there, and
absolutely.
I think that even you have to admit that
she's Andrew. She's actually Andrew.
Let me finish. There is no real regulation of THC levels, and even with your initial argument that other compounds and opioids, or stuff within marijuana is the active ingredient that actually causes a positive effect. The isolation of what is actually beneficial versus what is negative is still yet to be discovered to a large extent.
And that's because of the federal government, though. They stall these tests. We can't do them unless the federal government funds them.
And that was political, and I agree with that.
But you have to remember, our federal government has a patent for marijuana.
I think people should be able to go ruin themselves however they want. But at the same point, I think that it should be with an educated population,
and I think that's
and that we have a duty to tell people that this idea that medical marijuana is safe is a misnomer. There isn't a regulatory FDA screening of all these different strains of marijuana. I have friends in Hollywood that come to my house and that smoke pot that are friends of mine. I don't smoke it, but they're there with 9 different strains of pot. They've got peppermint pot to smoke in the morning, and they've got other pot to smoke in the evening, and this stuff's all over the place, and it varies month to month. And I can see how it affects them psychologically. I
think you both agree with I think you both happen to agree with each other on this.
Absolutely.
That you're basically saying you both agree with with legalizing marijuana. Yet there's just not a system. There needs to be a test done, regulation done.
It's more complicated than just
so complicated, and that's why coming out and talking about it gets people open into thinking about what's going on.
I couldn't agree with you more. If you just tuned in, you are listening to Clean Radio. Give us a call at 888-375-3613. That's 888-375-3613. We're in the studio tonight with an amazing woman, Dr. Dina. She opened up Southern California's first medical marijuana doctor's office in 2003. But let's go to a call. We have Gary in Silver Lake. Welcome to Clean Radio, Gary.
Hi, Gary.
Hey, Gary.
Hey, hi, everyone. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
All right. I think marijuana is a really good subject. I mean, from my personal experience, I started using marijuana when I was 14 years old. I started drinking at the same time. Alcohol made me sick. I didn't like the taste of marijuana. I immediately gravitated toward. I immediately started using marijuana addictively, and it immediately, very short after that, it opened me up to other drugs. Cocaine, methamphetamine, psychedelic drugs.
It was a gateway drug.
Right. It was a gateway drug.
So, I mean, and I'm not saying it's a gateway drug for everybody. I'm just, sharing with you guys my personal experience with it.
Yeah.
And but wouldn't you think that alcohol was a gateway to these other things just as much as marijuana was?
Yeah, but we live in a society of
guys, one at a time.
I mean,
Andrew?
Chocolate, food, our behavior, the lack of our societal ability to have actual use of drugs in a positive way. If you look, not so much now, I was just in France last week and people are drinking fairly heavily, but at least in the past they had some sort of culture around the use of alcohol. That's disappearing, unfortunately, but as it is in Europe overall. But, that has never happened. There isn't a cultural way to limit the abuse of drugs or create an environment where the use of them is actually positive. And that lack of cultural component, that societal integration of the use of a substance for a positive outcome leads to just people out there on their own exposed to what basically becomes a toxin at high levels. That's what concerns me the most with medical marijuana, where we've gone from 2 to 4% THC to 20%
at least
THC, and people are having drug-induced delusions and psychosis, and we're having to deal with that on the clinical treatment side.
Well, they have OCDs. People develop OCDs. People develop certain psychosis because their body, they can't metabolize it. It doesn't.
People
for some
have
people it is
underlying
dangerous. Right.
issues.
Gary, by the way, thank you very much for the call.
It's underlying. It's there. It's waiting to be brought out.
Right. There's always going to be somebody
something that's going to bring it out and trigger it.
Right.
The other thing is, do you really think that it's only 10% of people that are actually
That's actually a great question.
Not really using it for medical reasons?
I would say 10% are the people that are addicts, that are acting like addicts, that they want the strongest thing. They want to be really, really high, where there's probably another 30% that maybe aren't as sick as they claim they are. That maybe, at the end of the day, I look at a bunch of my girlfriends who have kids, and they go home and they're stressed out, and either they take a Valium or they have a glass of wine. Why? Because we grew up in the Valley in the 80s. Everybody said, take a chill pill. You know, if you're worked up, take a chill pill. So to me, I think that's more of a gateway than marijuana. To me, I mean, alcohol and milk and Advil are gateways.
Those people are not ending up in the ER, and we've seen a huge increase in ER admits from people from anxiety attacks, massive panic attacks, and paranoia from medical marijuana. And the idea that people think they can smoke marijuana and that it won't cause these problems is a misnomer.
Well, usually, Andrew,
the high THC levels
most
and the lack
people
of
going to the
ability
hospital,
to control dose.
They're not going to the hospital for smoking, usually. They're going to the hospital because they ate an edible that was way stronger than they thought it was because it was made with a hash or a concentrate.
Right.
And
so,
yes,
so
you should not be eating something like that.
Are you able to discern dose and prescribe
Absolutely.
that effectively?
What's happening right now, and this is what I'm so excited about, is that, and I'm telling all these dispensaries that I work with.
How are you guys trained? Yeah.
Well, we work with Steep Hill Laboratories, which is in Northern California. All of the medicine is tested through there. They come back and say, okay, this is the percentage of THC, and this brownie has this much. So I can tell the girls that dispense it, tell people do not eat more than 1 inch by 1 inch of this brownie. So you have 4 doses in this one brownie. Right. And if you eat too much, drink a glass of milk.
We're actually going to come back to this subject after the break. We're in the studio with Dr. Dina. We have Joe Parrott, Intake Director of at KLEAN Treatment Center. We have Erica Spiegelman as my co-host, and we have Andrew Spanswick on in England. And we're going to come back to this because I think that is a very interesting thing, because we're talking about addiction.
This
we're
is a
talking
great dialogue,
and we're talking about taking, marijuana in a safe and healthy way. But when it comes to addiction, saying safe and healthy doesn't always apply. So we'll be right back in a second.
I was gonna get up and find the broom, but then I got high. My room's still messed up, and I know why. Why, man? Yeah, cause I got high. Yeah, because I got high. Because I got high. I was gonna go to class before I got high. Come on, y'all. Check it out.
Are you struggling with an addiction that's ruining your life? Want to have a confidential conversation with a professional that will immediately assist you? Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs and would like a free drug testing kit and consultation? KLEAN Treatment Center is standing by right now to help those with addictions and the people who care about them. Call 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. Or go to KLEAN Treatment Center, that's clean with a K, KLEANTreatmentCenter.com.
Welcome everybody back to KLEAN Radio for one of the liveliest discussions we've ever had on KLEANRadio.com.
You should feel honored.
I'm feeling very honored
to
right
pot
now.
or not to pot? That is the question tonight on KLEAN Radio.
That.
But it's not. We're back in the studio with Dr. Dina, medical marijuana expert and consultant. You know how you know I'm not a pothead? I can't even say marijuana cool. Okay, I just want to share with you the last time I ever smoked pot out there. I was not, pot made me paranoid.
You could say weed, you could say reefer.
It just doesn't sound good.
Ganja.
But
There's
pot
lots
made
of
me,
names for it.
But it made me paranoid and it gave me the munchies, okay?
You smoked the wrong thing.
I had food issues and I'm Jewish. Not a good combination. But I just want to share this. The last night I ever smoked pot was I was really drunk and I was really high. And there was a movie on TV called How to Make an American Quilt. It was about 4 generations of women making a quilt. I was so high.
But we don't need KLEAN Treatment Center. We just need a movie.
That's exactly right. But I was so high and I was so drunk that I couldn't turn off this movie. I made a decision never again to smoke marijuana. So thank you, Winona Ryder, for making a quilt. But we're back in the studio with Dr. Dina. We have Andrew on the phone in England, and we have Erica Spiegelman. We have Joe Parrott, Intake Director at KLEAN. And we, of course, again, we have Dr. Dina. But let's go right to a call because we have Farrah in Long Beach. Farrah, welcome to KLEAN Radio.
Farrah.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? Good, how are you?
Good. Well, what I was thinking is that I think that people overthink marijuana too much, and I think that, it's a plant, and it's been around for so long that, people like in 1800s were using it for menstrual cramps and stuff like that, and there's more dangerous stuff out there besides marijuana, like alcohol, which it alters your mind completely to where the point that people crash and kill people all the time, and marijuana hasn't killed one person.
Well, I wouldn't. Yeah, Farrah, we're not against alcohol. We're not against alcohol. We're not against marijuana, but we are about speaking the truth. And
people have to take responsibility too. If you are driving and you're high, you're not present. You know?
Might not be going 80, but you're going 20, causing major backups.
I hate to jump in, and I hate to be disclosing something personally, but you know, I remember in college I was on marijuana, and I thought that I had this great idea of tapping 2 shotgun shells together, which would have blown my hand off. You know, I mean, the fact of the matter is that marijuana is extremely impairing.
Yeah.
And especially at high doses.
Certain kind
but is it more impairing than alcohol?
No.
We're not saying that it's
not
right.
But alcohol is legal to do for anyone. Anyone can walk into a bar at 21 years old and get into a car accident and kill someone. That's the problem I have.
Alcohol is not legal for everyone. It's regulated to 21.
Right, of course.
And then if people abuse alcohol, there's restrictions on its use. And in fact, people end up in jail from the use of alcohol. So, you know, we have this view of alcohol as like a right. But the reality is it's highly regulated, just like the right to drive.
And marijuana, I hope, will be regulated like alcohol.
And even if it is, there's going to be abuse. There's going to be abuse of any substance.
There will always be abuse. But if you're charging taxes and now you're able to provide these great rehab facilities like you guys, what you're doing is amazing. And without you, where would these people be? They're going to get the marijuana regardless if they go to a doctor or they
Dr. Dina, I have a few questions. We're on the phone with Farrah, who's actually got a great question. And Farrah, can I ask you an honest question? Obviously, I'm not going to say obviously, but do you smoke marijuana?
Yeah.
And why? Let me ask you a question, though. Why?
I smoke marijuana because I have pain, sometimes back pain, but like most of the time it's just for, you know, my own, you know, relaxation and just to like relax and eat some food.
So my question to you, Farrah, is what is missing that you need to smoke pot? I'm not against you smoking pot, but I got to be honest. I mean, Dr. Dina, you're in the studio. I don't think you're high. I'm not going to...
Well, let's ask Farrah how long she's been smoking.
Right. How long have you been smoking pot?
And how old are you?
Yeah,
I'm 23, and I've been smoking weed since I was like 12.
Okay.
And
so
I see Dr. Dina just,
Well, this is a different story because this is somebody that has emotionally developed, you know, through their lives. You've probably had relationships, your friendships that involve marijuana. I mean, marijuana, it seems like it's been intertwined in her life.
I want her to hear this from Dr. Dina's mouth herself.
Yeah,
Dr. Dina,
marijuana is not a crutch. It's something that you should use if you really need it. If your back's hurting and you can take an Advil and your back pain goes away, you don't need marijuana. If I don't have a problem at the end of the day, if you're not driving and you stay home on a Friday night and you want to smoke a joint and you're not going to hurt anyone and you
None
know
of us
that
either do.
And you know that it's something that you can handle, that's fine. But it's not something to use as an excuse, I have pain, unless you really have pain. Because there are people out there that, because people are so open to saying, oh, you know, I have a hangnail, and I take marijuana for that, you know, my mom now thinks that anyone can get marijuana. And I don't think that's fair when I know people who are suffering of cancer.
Well, same with prescription pills. Some people really need it medicinally.
Of course. And Farrah, I totally agree. I think that prescription pills are really scary. And I know a lot of friends who kiss their parents goodnight and that's it. They're never going to see their parents again because they overdosed in their bed. And that kills me.
Coming home at the end of the day and smoking. Coming home at the end of the day and smoking marijuana.
Farrah, one at a time. Farrah, go ahead.
I'm just saying that the side effects for prescription pills are like crazy. Like, I mean.
Okay, but here's the thing, Farrah, can you hold on one second? Here's the thing. We're not saying on this show right now, and we're going to get to Joe in a second, we're not saying that this one's good, this one's bad, this one's good, this one's bad. Prescription drugs serve a purpose. Many people don't use it with the purpose. Joe?
Right.
Well, what I was getting at was you said you think it's fine if people want to come home from work and smoke a joint, but then you're talking about recreational use and not medicinal use.
Absolutely, but that's where it
goes.
By the way, Farrah,
thank you for the call.
I have a girlfriend who, and this is, I'm not going to mention her name, of course.
Please
she has a 6-year-old daughter, and she went home at the end of the night, and she likes to have a little bit of wine. Well, her daughter had a seizure in the middle of the night, and she wasn't able to react quick enough. She didn't know how to do. She couldn't get her kid to the hospital. She had to call. Luckily, everything was okay, but she'll never touch a glass of wine again because she felt that she was so impaired at the end of the night, but had she smoked, she wouldn't have been. And that was the one thing that kind of scared me a little bit. And but like I said, with the places now,
one glass of wine versus marijuana, really?
Well, you know what, Andrew? I think there's a lot of weed out there. There's a lot of different strains, and they all affect you differently. And because I know so much about this.
There's two major strains, right? There's sativa, and then there's what?
There's 3 branches. There's sativa, there's indica, and then there's hybrid, which is a mixture of both. Sativa is a very cerebral strain. It's very high in THC.
That sounds like what Farrah was taking.
Not necessarily, though. Actually, Farrah would need an indica because she has back pain. So
I don't think she was smoking it through.
So if she was actually properly smoking the right thing, she would not feel high. Her back pain would go away. She probably wouldn't get the munchies, and she wouldn't be as stoned as she would probably like to be.
She's in her early 20s, too. She doesn't probably need
I mean, I think that's some... Yeah, sorry,
Wait,
Andrew.
Judith, let me jump in here. Why are we not, instead of... I mean, let's face it, the reality is that a lot of people smoke marijuana for recreational purposes.
Right.
As they do drink alcohol. There is no really good reason to drink alcohol other than...
But there's no medicinal purpose for alcohol.
Right. Well, there is. It appeases anxiety.
But no, there's no medicinal use for alcohol like there is marijuana. There's no medicinal use. I mean, yes, it numbs you. It numbs you.
It allows social conversation. It's created
but that's not,
incredible amounts of...
Well, some would say that's anxiety.
I'm really not trying to defend alcohol.
Let's not go there. I can't drink.
Alcohol, wait. Alcohol is an independent... or alcohol has been vastly important in the development of culture since the beginning of time, well before marijuana. And marijuana...
I disagree with you. I think marijuana has been around here longer than alcohol, and our country was actually based on hemp and tobacco.
Since the beginning of time, and God created marijuana and alcohol on day whenever He created plants.
They
fermented the fruit.
God created alcohol and marijuana, and we've all been high and drunk since. But it has definitely had an effect on culture. And
I think he actually, Andrew, I think you raise a great point.
Andrew. We know through prohibition that we can't get rid of alcohol. I think we know through prohibition that we can't get rid of marijuana.
Right.
It's ridiculous to not legalize it. The question is, how are we going to regulate it, and what are the positive benefits beyond recreational use? The other thing is that as Americans, should we be free to use things recreationally, and then if we become addicted to them or they cause societal problems, or you do something criminal like run into somebody while you're driving or neglect your child and your child dies while you're high, what should the criminal punishment be? And then also, as responsible citizens and legislators and members of society, should we not be actively engaging in a conversation with people about the effects of these drugs? And for too long, there's been just a denial about the effects of alcohol and marijuana for people, and there's been a willingness to abdicate or relieve people from responsibility for their actions because of something deemed societally okay. And I think the greatest fear about marijuana, if you legalize it, is that it will be okay for people to get away with things that are criminal if they use it.
By the way, if you just tuned in, you are listening to KLEAN Radio. Give us a call at 888-375-3613. That's 888-375-3613. We have an amazing show tonight. We have Dr. Dina in, medical marijuana expert and consultant. Thank you so much for coming in, by the way.
My pleasure.
And in the studio also, we have Joe Parrott, intake director at KLEAN Treatment Center. Hey, Joe.
Hey.
And jump in anytime you want, as always. And we have Eric Abfab Spiegelman and Andrew Spanswick across the pond.
I was just going to say something really quick about Andrew, what you were saying too, and Dr. Dean. I think we're all on the same page, is that people need to be educated.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's really what we're lacking. People are ignorant to the fact of what alcohol could do if abused, and the same thing with marijuana. And I just think there has to be a bigger discussion.
Well, it's really fascinating because it's almost too late, because Washington and Colorado are already legal now.
You mean shocking? The government did something?
Well, no, the government did nothing,
not on a
really.
Federal level.
State.
The federal level
Exactly.
preempts the state level.
But still, half the people are not educated in why or how it
here's
passed.
the biggest
I mean, nobody
issue.
understands what went on.
If you smoke a joint and then you drive...
Period.
Andrew, if you smoke a joint and then you drive 2 days later, you're still going to have marijuana in your system because it stays in your system for approximately 30 days. So how do we know that I'm not driving under the influence if I smoked a joint a week ago? there's a huge problem.
Actually, this is the point I made last week on the show, was that with alcohol, the majority of accidents that actually get underreported are people that are hungover the next day.
Yeah, you did talk about
and impaired, and they end up actually getting into accidents that are extremely costly to society, but they're not legally drunk, but they're so impaired and hungover that there's nothing that can be criminally prosecuted. So there's no responsibility.
Well, there's also more accidents the day after a time change.
I've had friends. But I've had friends arrested the next day because there's alcohol still in their system.
Really?
Like, oh yeah. People have been pulled over the next morning and they have alcohol
figuring
in their
out
breath.
So here's
what is the percentage in your bloodstream.
Dr. Dina, here's the question: what are you trying to do to educate and to change? What is
Well, first of all, I want people to understand that even though marijuana has a really bad stigma attached to it, and it's not for everyone, but for certain people it really can be a lifesaver. I have several patients that are in a wheelchair, they're quadriplegics, that couldn't even move without it. And now with just all they have is a quarter of a peanut butter cookie every day, and it's really helped them.
And so some people take it in response to.
So here's the question: how do you separate between?
Right.
Obviously, there's certain cases that nobody's going to argue with, and Farrah. Not to use Farrah as an example again, but how do you separate
Unfortunately,
that?
the way, does Farrah have a doctor's note? Number one, we don't know if she's obtaining it legally or not.
Let's assume that she doesn't, and she's just recreationally smoking.
Can I jump in again? I'm sorry, and I know I'm in Britain, so I have a second delay here probably on the phone, but, the active ingredients are pretty clear. It's THC, it's whatever, and we have multi-million-dollar pharmaceutical companies that can isolate all of the active ingredients of marijuana. If there were really properties that were so tremendous for these particular clients...
Andrew, you're late. The government already pulled a patent for marijuana for a drug. They have a patent ready to go. So there's definitely a reason for it. There's over 150 compounds in that plant, and right now people are only aware of the top 3, and one of them is THC, and that's where people have the euphoria. However, the male plant, which is hemp, where there's no THC or under 1%, there's actually amazing beneficial, the CBDs in the leaves, which are really healing people. You can make a tea from it. I have people that are juicing them. Old women are juicing these leaves, telling me that they don't have arthritis anymore. It's just helping the swelling of their joints.
Well, hemp is legal.
No, it's not. It's illegal.
1% THC.
Hemp is illegal. It's legal to buy a hemp shirt.
We have T-shirts made.
Right. We can't make them here. We can't grow the hemp, but we can buy it from another country. We can buy it from China.
You can buy enough hemp rope to juice for 20 years.
You can't juice a hemp rope. You would have to juice the actual fresh leaves off the plant.
By the way, you guys are having great banter, Andrew. I can't wait
to meet you, Andrew.
I can't wait, Andrew, till you come back from across the pond, and we'll have Dr. Dina back in the studio.
I'm for a reason. I don't get hit.
Why not just make the male plant available for? Why not just make the male plant available?
Well, that's one of the steps.
That would be chauvinistic, and the feminist movement has decided that no male marijuana plant.
Kentucky is actually putting it on their bill. They want to be able to grow hemp.
Guys, one at a time. So let's get back to this.
Only in West Hollywood can you only have the male plant.
But by the way, we're back. Everybody out there listening, you're listening to Clean Radio, a show about addiction and recovery. But one of the things we're discussing tonight is, marijuana. We're discussing, and listen, Joe is, who's sober. I hope I didn't break your anonymity. Erica, Andrew. And one of the biggest questions we always get when somebody is getting sober, I mean, how often do we hear this? Is they go, I can't smoke pot.
Right.
Why can't I smoke pot? I wasn't addicted to pot. And I often say, well, why can't I use heroin? I wasn't addicted to heroin.
Right.
So
it's anything that's going to cloud you or not keep you present in the moment. And it's cross addiction. So we see that a lot with people.
Absolutely.
Dr. Dina, does everybody assume because you're the pot doctor, you're the basis of the show Weeds, you and Snoop are compadres. Does everybody assume that you're a pothead?
I think when people look at me, they're really confused because I don't look like a pothead.
Right.
I do partake occasionally, and I have. If you look at how skinny I am, I'm really, really skinny. And sometimes I go all day and I don't even eat, and I just don't have an appetite. But if I smoke a little bit, it really does make me hungry, and then I feel better.
But here's why are you not hungry?
I don't know.
Andrew?
Tell me, Andrew, why am I not hungry?
Andrew's come in and save the day.
Why am I so hungry?
Diagnose me, Andrew.
That would take a few sessions to figure out what trauma is suppressing your appetite through.
I just, you know what it is? I'm just so busy all the time. I don't have time, and I just keep going. And for some reason, I've always been like that.
That tends to
I'm
be
amazing.
mania,
There you go, Andrew.
Yeah.
But Andrew, actually, what is? I mean, you guys were talking about this at the beginning of the show, and as your study in Germany, Andrew, what are people with marijuana? What is you have this thing where usually what people's what people's mental illnesses are. Is schizophrenia one of the things that people treat marijuana with? What do people treat marijuana with?
Well, marijuana is sort of like the sort of mystical drug in a way that it doesn't really attach itself directly like the way that other drugs do. Most other drugs that we deal with that are illicit are much more profound. So cocaine, amphetamine, speed, we tend to see people with schizophrenia attach themselves to that very directly because it makes them think that they're actually much more organized in their thinking than they actually are. Alcohol, anxiety. I mean, anyone that has an anxiety disorder or a depressive disorder, which is about 50% of the population at one point in their life, will attach themselves to alcohol. When you get to marijuana, it becomes very confusing because marijuana actually is one of the few drugs that actually, not one of the few, but one of the sort of, and I hate to use this word gateway drug because I think it's a horrible word because it just happens to be that people are exposed to marijuana early like they are alcohol, unlike higher level drugs like cocaine or heroin, which are harder to get, although becoming easier for adolescents, especially through prescription pills like hydrocodone, oxycodone, Roxy, stuff like that. So, but the reality is that marijuana still is considered a gateway drug because people will experiment with it early. And my experience, which is not scientific but more case example, and I like to state that clearly, is that the vast majority of the people that I've worked with or known, I can describe a very clinical syndrome of progressive use leading to paranoia and long-term effects of basically arrested development of their ability to function cognitively with a lack of ability to have ambition. And I've seen that over and over and over again. What I think is interesting about that is that I'm not saying that the active ingredients in marijuana are not necessarily beneficial. What I'm saying is that marijuana is just a pure plant that you smoke as in totality or eat as an edible.
Dr. Dina, I see
it's too impure. It's not purified enough that we need to figure out what the beneficial aspects of it are. For example, in cocaine, we use cocaine in eye surgery still to this day for good reason.
Numbing qualities.
Right?
Yeah.
It restricts
Andrew, it's
the
really interesting.
vascularity of the eye.
When you look at cocaine, cocaine doesn't get picked off of the coca plant. You actually have to take, hundreds of thousands of pounds of these leaves, and they process it, and that's how they turn it into a cocaine.
Distilled, which marijuana isn't.
Marijuana isn't, and it's really up to each gardener to decide what the product is going to be like. Because if you're growing it outdoors, for example, I have asthma, so I can't smoke anything from outdoors.
But you're proving my point, which
absolutely.
is that, the federal government has done a horrible job. I mean, they have one group that they license to grow marijuana. Some guy from India, I think, on the last documentary I saw. There's some guy from India that came to the United States. Now he's got the sole license to grow marijuana for the federal government, which is ridiculous because there's thousands of strains now. We're cloning plants, and we're getting better and better in the quasi-legal market and the illicit market at developing very beneficial, probably, strains of marijuana. But yet we're not really at the point where we can convert those into medicinal qualities that are highly regulated and controlled.
Well, Andrew, I think there's a few doctors that I'd like to introduce you to that would probably explain it better than I, but they are the ones that do the testing for the federal government for medical marijuana. and they would disagree with you because it's really fascinating. Some of the tests they're doing, and keep in mind, they have to do the test based on marijuana that was provided to them from the government. So it's a quantified test. We know it's all exactly the same. And he says that the lower, they grow a very low percentage, like usually 4 to 6% THC, where at the dispensaries, you can pick up 20% THC, not really over 20, that's really doesn't exist. However, the test results he gets back on 4 to 6% is amazing, and those are quantified effects. Now, if they're coming up with quantifying machines so they could actually make a pill and it's quantified so you know each time exactly how much you take.
Right, it's more regulated.
It's not just about smoking a plant.
But we've had THC pills for
Marinol, exactly.
Yeah.
And what's so fascinating is a prescription for Marinol costs $900 for 1 month's supply, and they can probably spend $60 and get pot, and it's the same thing.
But also, the clinical results are very negative.
Absolutely.
That's one of the reasons it hasn't become positive.
Well, because it's synthetic. It's not real.
Is right. Yeah, has terrible clinical results.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I have this thing. The next time, Andrew, we're going to have Dr. Dina back in. We're going to have one of her medical experts in here. You're going to be here. And
some boxing gloves.
From when you were
No, I agree with Andrew.
No,
I really
do.
Guys. I do.
I
thought marijuana was the nonviolent drug. We'll just
we'll hug it out, Andrew.
I can be ornery, and then you won't ever want to hit me.
Trust me, she'll want to hit you.
We the whole thing is like to each their own. Everybody has to have their own opinion. This is why we live in the country we live in, because there is freedom. We have our freedoms, and so this is just an open discussion that I think is so,
and I think it's extremely important.
And Andrew will appreciate
keep stressing that, because it's all about trying to learn more, to evolve, to grow, and educate ourselves.
I agree. There's nothing that would please me more than to find out that there's specific agents within medical marijuana that could be used effectively to treat people. I mean, my dad's dying of multiple myeloma right now.
Right.
And thank goodness he's on, even going through chemo and whatever, he's on drugs that have been developed, anti-nausea drugs, where he's going through chemo and he's not having a negative effect.
Excellent.
Although I wouldn't really know because he's so stubborn and British, he wouldn't tell me anyway. But it appears that he's able to function despite that. And if there were elements of marijuana that could actually be synthesized and regulated by dose, I would be all for that. My major concern is that, I live in West Hollywood now, and I have a very nice condo in a very expensive building, and it's become like a college dorm. I walk in there now, and every floor reeks of marijuana.
I already know.
Except for your next door neighbor, by the way.
My downstairs neighbor.
You can't tell me. I'm not mentioning who lives next to me. There are a few rock bands that live there. But anyway, I have to say that it doesn't seem to me that medical marijuana is doing all that it should do.
Andrew, we're running out of time, by the way, on this end of the pond. But you know what? I want to actually keep this discussion going. So, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Dr. Dina back on when Andrew's back in town. That's if you want it. I feel like the guy that just got off a first date. And he's like, right away, I'm asking you out on a second date.
Love it.
So I'm asking you out on a second date. Andrew will be back in town, actually. So hopefully in a couple of weeks, we'll be back in the studio.
You get 2 dates in one.
Andrew, listen, have a safe flight back from England, okay?
Yeah, I'll see you back.
Safe travels. We'll see you soon.
Bye, Andrew.
Bye, Andrew.
I hope your plane doesn't crash.
You had to say that. You had to say that.
I mean, I'm wishing him a safe trip. It's
like, you say, break a leg. Go break a leg.
That's such a Jewish wish of death. I hope
well, you have the Judica. Andrew, I love you. Have a safe flight.
Andrew, we love you. Don't break a leg. Don't crash.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's Andrew Spanswick, owner and operator of KLEAN Treatment Center. Andrew, God bless. Godspeed. Talk to you later.
Love you guys. Thank you so much.
Bye.
So, Dr. Dina is in the studio. Joe Perot from KLEAN is in the studio and tech director. So you have something I really want to touch on really quickly. I hope you come back, and you will come back, of course. You're with the Judah.
Why not?
And
she's part of the crew.
Yeah, with the Judah and the Joe, and the Erica. But you have a show coming out with Snoop.
Yes, a YouTube show.
A YouTube.
Now let's talk about some fun stuff.
I just want to talk about Snoop.
This. You're coming out with a show with Snoop, and
Snoop Doggy Dog.
YouTube.
It's actually Snoop
Snoop
Lion now.
Oh yeah, he changed his name.
It's official now. His movie came out yesterday.
He's converted to something.
This is fun now. Yeah.
Go see Reincarnated in the movie theater now.
Oh, is this a new movie?
In the movie theater for a little while.
There's something that I really want to touch upon because you know, what's his name is in the hospital now. He OD'd.
Little Wayne.
Little Wayne. I was about to call him Little Weezy.
Very sad.
I was about to call him Little
really
Weezy.
sad.
And, you know, there's something I realized a few weeks back, and I want to get your opinion on this, but I also want to talk about this next time we're on the show, is in the African-American community, the culture.
The rap culture.
You know, Lindsay Lohan gets in trouble. We say she needs to go to rehab. Rihanna gets in trouble. We say she's just partying too hard. Is there like this different stigma that happens in the African-American culture where people aren't getting enough help?
Yes and no. I think that it's definitely, you know, part of their culture to party a little harder when they're younger. But I think the biggest issue, and I'm going to thank the DEA very much for this one, because they go after medical marijuana places, but how does Lil Wayne get promethazine cough syrup with codeine by the bottle? All these kids are putting pictures online of this. Yeah, they're drinking the scissorp, you know, and it's really scary.
I mean,
it's I mean, they're doing that also, but this promethazine, this is prescription.
This is a level. I know.
This is prescription drugs. Where are they getting this from? This is a huge problem.
You know, and but my point being that in certain, you know, in different cultures, and Joe, we face this a lot. You know, people, you know, we wish that there was this huge different, you know, minority ethnic thing that everybody was out there getting help, or not enough African, you know, people.
Because they're from a lot of single family homes, and unfortunately you have these moms who are working and they can't watch their kids. The resources aren't there, and that's just what happens, and they get lost in the system. And
the culture, the environment.
They see kids that are smoking pot, especially young African American or Latino kids. They throw them in jail, and then they learn how to burglarize a house or whatever from their friend.
Oh, that's a whole.
You know, we're going to keep this discussion going. Like I said, in a couple weeks, we're going to have you back. I beg of everybody out there to come, you know, to go find this show. Go to cleanradio.com or cleanradio.com, or on Facebook /Clean Radio. The show will be up in a couple of days. You could also listen to a lot of past shows. But one of the things, this show takes a lot of people to put the show together. I want to thank Rand.
Thank you,
Rand. I want to thank Patrick.
Thanks, Rand.
Thank you, Patrick.
And Patrick informed me that every time we have a show about marijuana, you know, we got a lot of bad posts, and he took him, you know, he didn't want people negative posts saying Andrew and I don't know anything about marijuana. So I encourage you, and he said, I didn't realize these posts were going up. So post, comment, it's okay. We're big boys and girls.
Go for it.
You know, and we'll comment back. And this isn't against, this isn't pro. This is about having a discussion.
Exactly.
So Dr. Dina, I want to thank you so much. I mean,
Pleasure.
And how do people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Dr. Dina, DRDINA. Or Instagram, Dr. Dina 420.
I like that. I'm gonna follow you now.
Wink, wink.
Yeah.
Okay, and I gotta tell you, Joe, thank you so much for coming in. We're gonna have you
as
always.
always.
You're always welcome to come in.
Thank you.
For everybody out there listening, if you need any help, give us a call at 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. There's a good chance Joe will be taking your call. He's one of the sweetest people you will ever talk to in your life.
The best.
If you're going through a rough time out there, you no longer have to. Give us a call at 888-601-6040. The discussion continues at cleanradio.com.
Are you struggling with an addiction that's ruining your life? Want to have a confidential conversation with a professional that will immediately assist you? Do you suspect a loved one is abusing drugs and would like a free drug testing kit and consultation? KLEAN Treatment Center is standing by right now to help those with addictions and the people who care about them. Call 888-601-6040. That's 888-601-6040. Or go to KLEAN Treatment Center, that's clean with a K, cleantreatmentcenter.com.